Security analyst Evelyn Farkas. She's the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. And Larry Pfeiffer, he is also here. He is the director of the Hayden Center at George Mason University and a former senior director of the White House Situation Room. Larry also served as a chief of staff to the CIA. Evelyn, I want to start with you. I just asked Matt this. I think it's worth asking you again. The big concern is that these ISIS fighters and the families, as Matt was just describing, will escape and try to reconstitute the caliphate. The president was asked about this, and he seemed to brush it off and say, well, they would escape to Europe.
Yeah. I mean, Katie, it's absolutely irresponsible what's happening now. The fact that we would allow this to happen, you know, the president threatened to do this last December, and this is why Secretary Mattis quit, then Secretary of Defense quit, in addition to the envoy to the region. What's going to happen is not exactly what Matt described. It's actually going to be worse because the Kurdish fighters are going to abandon their posts guarding those hardened terrorists and their kind of hardened families as well. And they're going to go and defend their own turf, their own territory, their own people, their own towns. They're not going to care what happens with the ISIS fighters at that point because they're fighting for their lives. So the ISIS people will escape. We know that. And they will go where they can go to do what they want to do, which is essentially to attack us in the West. We went to Syria in part to fight terrorism. I was in the Obama administration when we went in. I know there's a lot of, back and forth on whether we should be there. But if we're going to leave, this is not the way to do it.
Lindsey Graham has been pretty outspoken against the president. He said President Trump hasn't ended the war. He's created a bigger war. And if you think that America can withdraw from Syria and the Mideast without consequence, you're making a mistake. He's basically saying the president has turned his back also on the Kurds, and he's worried that it will be a bloodbath for the Kurdish forces. Darren, tell me, how do you feel about this?
I'm sorry, me? Larry?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right.
Sorry.
Well, it's quite all right. I find myself in violent agreement with Senator Lindsey Graham at this point in time. We have a NATO ally that is acting against the interests of NATO, underscoring what Evelyn just said about these individuals returning to Europe and perhaps ultimately doing harm to America, and ultimately against American national interest. So I wholeheartedly support Senator Graham's efforts and hope he and others can convince the president to turn this decision back as best we can.
Larry, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to call you by the wrong name a second ago.
That's all right.
Do you think that is there a way to get in the president's ear and have him change his mind on this, or is it already too late? Is there a way to mitigate some of the consequences going forward?
There's potential to mitigate. We've seen it happen in the past where he has reversed course or he has softened his language, which has allowed the Defense Department, State Department to then begin to take actions to ameliorate the situation.
What do we do in the future, Evelyn, when we need help again fighting against ISIS, if they are able to reconstitute?
Well, I think it's going to be really hard, Katie, to convince Kurds or other forces to work with us to help us achieve our objectives if we are shown to be unreliable. And by the way, this is not going to be an issue just for stateless fighters like the Kurds, because you look at our allies in Israel and elsewhere, but Israel first and foremost because they're close, getting nervous. What kind of ally and partner is the United States where we'll actually engage, we'll fight, and then we'll withdraw at a weird point in time that makes no sense whatsoever? You actually should be withdrawing our forces, Mr. President, as part of a peace deal, as part of an agreement where we use the leverage we have from the forces we have on the ground. And by the way, Larry's right. This is reversible. We still have forces there nearby. But we should be using our leverage to get all of the sides to the table and to come up with an agreement, because there's a civil war going on. It's not just a counterterrorism issue.
It's a good point. And Larry, I know the president doesn't want to be in endless wars. He said so. He campaigned on that. His supporters voted him in partially because they wanted him to pull American troops back. Could he have negotiated a peace deal? Was there a way to do this, to get American troops out of there more cleanly, one that would not put the Kurdish forces at risk, one that would not put the risk or heighten the risk of ISIS fighters escaping?
Absolutely. He should be using the forces he has at his fingertips. He should be using his diplomats. He should be using the U.S. military and defense officials. We should be having a full frontal assault, not with weapons, but with words to bring people together, bring them to the table. Clearly, this administration has failed in not doing that and in allowing Turkey to proceed as they have.
Does it put Americans at risk at home?
Oh, I think ultimately with these ISIS individuals potentially going free or likely going free, they're going to get themselves reorganized. They're going to redouble their efforts, and their goals are not just limited to attacks in the region. The goals of ISIS are ultimately to hurt Americans.
Evelyn Farkas and Larry Pfeiffer, thank you guys both for joining us. We appreciate it.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.